Chapter 18. The taxi slowed as it pulled into the train station and stopped. The sudden jerk dragged Jay from his mental deliberations. They purchased their tickets, and a little while later found themselves on a train heading towards Paris. During the short time waiting for the train to arrive, they had found a map. It was just a few tense minutes, but buying the map at the shop attached to the station had brought a welcome reprieve to them. Safely sitting on the train, Lexie was next to the window, focusing on the map, while Jay found himself obsessed with watching the other passengers. He still didn't think that he would be able to accurately spot anyone that might be following them. It was all he could do right now. Plus, it kept his mind occupied and off anything that required more emotional involvement. He paid close attention to anything his intuition had to say as he watched the people around them. It had known something was off when they had been approached on the platform for the first time. It had a better track record so far than just watching did. He felt his eyes being drawn to a corner of the train repeatedly. He could not figure out why at first, and then he got a good glimpse of the woman sitting there. She was plain and blended in with the people surrounding her. She should have been invisible. Someone that was part of the background, never meant to be noticed. Everything about her screamed, "Do not look at me, do not notice me." Now that he had seen her, he could not help but focus on her. There was something familiar about her. She looked up and caught his gaze, and he knew why she was familiar. She was the same person who he had noticed on the train the morning before. The same one that had raised his suspicions. She smiled sardonically, her lip curling to the side as she stood. Jay elbowed Lexie and tilted his head at the approaching woman. "That's her, the woman from the train yesterday. What are the odds that we would run into her twice on the train like this?" Jay asked as he began to sweat. "Not very high, I would think." Was all the time Lexie had to say anything before, the lady sat herself down in front of them, twisting in her seat to focus on them. "James and Alexis, how are you enjoying your trip to France so far?" she asked in flawless English, with no hint of an accent in her voice. "Or would you rather I call you Jay and Lexie, since those are the names you gave each other as kids?" Jay felt the blood rush from his face. Lexie's hand underneath his grew cold as all the blood rushed away from her extremities in a similar reaction. That was something no one should know about. His parents knew, and Tracy and Alex probably did, but that was it. To everyone else, it was just how they introduced themselves. There was nothing more to it than that. Who was this lady to know something that only the closest people in their lives knew? "Who are you, and how do you know that?" Lexie asked, her hand shaking under Jay's. "Oh, I know that and more," the lady replied with the standard cliché line. "We can talk about me later if you want. Right now I'm here to talk about you. More specifically, what you are doing here. So tell me what prompted you to come to France when you did." Her eyes were hard and focused on them, to the exclusion of everything else around them. Everything around them slowed as Jay's mind began working on pure fear and adrenaline. It was working overtime to process everything around them, taking in every detail and seeing the people that had started to shuffle towards the doors for an upcoming stop. Jay slowly flipped his hand over so he was holding Lexie's in his grip. He would be able to pull her along when the time came for them to make a run for it. "You may be here to talk to us, but we don't know you and don't owe you anything. So either tell us who you are or leave us alone." Lexie's voice was hard, betraying none of the fear they were both feeling, surprising Jay and herself. "I already told you, that isn't how this works. Now answer my questions, or we are going to have a problem." The other woman's voice was dripping with scorn and derision for the two she was facing. The doors to the train opened, and Jay made his move. Surging from their seat, Jay shoved a man standing in his way on top of the lady they had been talking to. They tangled and were swearing in different languages as Lexie took the lead and began pulling Jay behind her. Their hands were tangled in their bags as they pushed through the crowd and onto the platform beyond. Running as fast as they could, they sprinted out of the rapidly emptying terminal and into the night air. following the largest group of people they could see. They ran to them and mingled into the middle of the group, hiding themselves in their midst. Pulling Jay close to her side, Lexie pulled him down and spoke in his ear as they walked with the group, receiving odd looks every once in a while. What is going on, and how did she find us? We didn't even know that we were going to be on that train until it arrived. Jay pulled back and then leaned down to her ear. I'm not sure how she found us, but I'm sure that she is the same lady I spotted on the train yesterday. That makes it twice now that she has found us. Moreover, she obviously knew who we are. She even knew that we gave each other our nicknames. I haven't even told my grandfather that. Lexie pulled them away from the group as everyone rounded a corner, leading the way into a darkened corner and away from the street. They faded into the night and then out of sight. Doubling back to the train station, they stayed out of sight and hidden in the shadows as they watched the people milling about the station. I don't see her, do you? Jay wondered softly, not taking his eyes off the crowd in front of them. No, do you think it's safe to continue on the train, or should we find a different way to travel? Lexie replied and asked in turn. Oh, I don't think you should be worried about going anywhere for the time being. A cold, hard voice warned from behind, just as a hand appeared around the back of their necks, firmly holding them in place. You shouldn't have tried to run. I was being nice before. I was even prepared to let you go after you had answered my questions. Now I don't think I'll be doing that. The hand on Jay's neck squeezed like a vice, causing him to gasp in pain. Fine. He gasped out, sinking to his knees. What do you want? The pressure on his neck lessened, and he saw Lexie on the ground beside him in a similar hold. I already told you what I want, and you refuse to answer my questions. The woman accentuated her words with a squeeze of his neck. You didn't give us a good reason to answer your questions. You appeared out of nowhere, knowing too much about us. For all we know, you could be a creepy stalker lady. Lexie gasped out, interrupting as her neck was similarly squeezed. Why should I have to tell you anything now? I'm not a creepy stalker lady, and that should suffice for now. Jay snorted at her words. Really, you attack us and follow us in France, and we're just supposed to take your word that you aren't a creepy stalker lady? A frustrated growl came from behind them before the hands on their necks disappeared. Fine, I can see that we got off on the wrong foot. I didn't realize that you had spotted me as anything more than a person in the crowd yesterday. She stopped speaking as they rose to their feet and turned to face her. Before I continue, just answer this. Has anything happened since you arrived to put you on edge, or do you act like this with everyone? We were attacked while we were at the hospital, earlier today. Then later we were followed when we went to talk to somebody, before we escaped and got on the train. Jay replied angrily as he pulled Lexie to his side and slightly behind him, shielding her with his body. Where you somehow found us. The lady in front of them stood straighter at his words. Who was it? Was it someone that you had seen before? Yeah, we both recognized him. He stopped us when we were on the train platform yesterday. He wanted directions, he gave off a weird vibe, and then we changed clothes right afterward. Jay grumbled, losing some of his bluster as he added the random detail at the end, not sure if it mattered or helped. He was armed when he found us at the hospital. He had a gun with a silencer on it. Lexie added from behind him. It didn't make a difference at the time, as I'm guessing he had already tagged you. But good thinking about changing your clothes and appearance right away. They were confused as to what she meant when she said they had been tagged. A noise farther back in the shadows of the dark alley had them all pausing and holding still. The barely there sound of gravel crunching underfoot punctuated the surrounding night. They watched as the woman turned towards the sound, smoothly pulling a small gun from a holster she had hidden beneath her shirt in the small of her back. Take this and run. Contact me when you get a chance. I'm here to help and keep you safe, she said quietly, handing them a card while keeping her eyes on the shadows behind them. Reaching back under her shirt, she withdrew a cylindrical object and began screwing it onto her gun. Taking the card from her outstretched hand, Lexie secured it in her purse before taking Jay's hand and leading him from the alley. As silently as they could make themselves, they moved away from the shadows and into the light surrounding the train station. The sound of a train entering the station prompted them to start running. Behind them, they heard several muffled bursts of sound before they were in the station and surrounded by a noisy crowd. Regardless, they both had an idea as to what the sounds had been. Someone, or as more likely the case, multiple people, had just started firing their guns. Running for the platform, they made it in time to enter the train just before it left the station. Once more, they were heading in the right direction. "Do you have an idea of what route we should be taking with the trains?" Jay asked, referring to the limited time she had been able to look at their train map before. "Some. I need to make sure of a few transfer spots, but I remember most of it. We need to go back through Paris and then we need to switch trains." Lexie put her head between her knees and twined her hands behind her head. "What are we going to do, Jay? We are in way over our heads here. Everything was fine when this was just an adventure to learn more about my parents and who you really are. Now though, we have people chasing us. Guns being drawn on us, and generally bad people wanting to undoubtedly hurt or kill us. Probably both." Lexie was beginning to lose her calm as the events of the past day caught up with her. Her body started to shake as everything that had happened to them piled on suddenly and threatened to overwhelm her. Seeing what was happening to Lexie, Jay grabbed her shoulders and pulled her to his side, holding her as she slowly calmed down, relaxing into his warmth. For now, he could hide how close he had been to losing it as well. Holding her like this may have helped her to calm down, but it had also done the same for him. It had allowed him the opportunity to recenter himself and breathe deeply, like he had been taught for meditating. Lexie took several deep, calming breaths before speaking. "When we get to Paris, we need to find someplace to get a proper train schedule and to hide for a while. It seems like there are trains that go to Luxembourg nearly every hour. Without a schedule from this station though, I can't say for certain. Either way, we'll need to stay hidden until it arrives and we are safely on board. All right, in the meantime, we need to stay alert and watch the people around us. We still have some time before we get to Paris and can disembark." Jay hinted before looking at her purse. "What does the card that she gave you say?" "I don't know, I haven't looked at it yet." "Hold on." Lexie pulled her purse from her side, peering into its depths as she looked for the card she had hastily stuffed in it before. Pulling it free, she held it out in front where Jay could see it as well. "It only has a telephone number on it." "What the heck?" Jay asked, confused. Lexie flipped it over, confirming there was nothing on the other side. "She didn't even tell us her name or anything, and she really expects us to call this. We don't even know if she genuinely wants to help us or cause us more trouble." True, all we really know for sure about her at this point is that she doesn't seem to be working with the fellow who attacked us at the hospital. Jay conceded, confirming just how little they actually knew. Lexie crumpled the card in her fist before sighing and shoving the now wrinkled ball into her purse. "Well, either way, it doesn't matter. We are not going to be calling that number anytime soon," she determined firmly. As she unclenched her fist, her fingers brushed their phones. The brief touch triggered a thought as they did so. She said that he had tagged us. Do you think that she meant he put a tracker on us somehow? Lexie's mind pulled out everything she had ever read or seen in movies about the devices and the implications it brought. Jay pulled away, looking her in the eye as he responded. "Probably, but I don't see how. He only got close enough to us the once, and he never touched us or our belongings. Now if someone were watching us and trailed after us onto the train, they could have placed one then. If there is a tracker, then why didn't he find us earlier when we were at the house? They should have been there quicker." "That's not actually true," Lexie protested, interrupting him. "He tapped me on the same shoulder that held my purse when we were on the platform." "So, you think it might be in your purse then?" Jay asked her in surprise. I don't know. Maybe they put it in our suitcases. Lexie stopped talking as she thought. No, never mind. If there was a tracker in our suitcases, then they would have simply followed us to the B&B. Somehow we lost the tracker after it was placed on us. Putting that aside for the moment, what do you think of the odds being that she placed one on us as well? Jay's eyes unfocused as he thought over everything that had happened to them. I think the odds are very good. He whispered, still lost in thought. The train platform in Versailles. That's where it must have happened. Where what must have happened? All I remember happening is falling down there. Oh, you think that was done on purpose? Lexie asked, trying to follow his train of thought. I do. I think that there was a tracker in your purse before then. They pushed you down on the platform, causing everything in your purse to get strewn everywhere. I'm thinking that she took the opportunity to take their tracker and replace it with her own. He continued, explaining his thought process to her. She knew there was a tracker on us. She as much as admitted it when she told us that we had been tagged. Since no one came after us at the B&B, I think it's safe to say that you're right and that the original tracker was gone by then. Whoever this lady is, she doesn't seem interested in us in the same way the man is. Jay let out a frustrated groan. I am sick of calling them the man and the woman. We need to call them something so we don't get confused. Fine, how about Pierre for the guy? It's a typical French-sounding name, and I think that's what he is. I don't know about the lady, however, I think she is American. Lexie decided, sharing his frustration with their lack of names for the people chasing them. Fine, if we think she is American, then how about Betty? Jay replied, throwing out a random name. Betty, really? Fine, whatever, she is now known as Betty. Continue with what you were saying before the lack of names distracted you. Lexie griped, letting her frustration with him ring clearly in her voice. Okay, so I don't think Betty is necessarily trying to hurt us. If she removed Pierre's tracker, then she helped us just as much as she did herself by replacing it with her own. Anyway, this is all just supposition, unless we can confirm that there is actually a tracker in your purse. Jay said, eyeing the object of their discussion. Fine, you are right. We need to look through it. When we get to Paris and are waiting for the train, we'll go through everything in my purse and remove anything that looks suspicious. Lexie held her purse close to her chest, keeping it away from Jay. Her purse was her private domain and not something for other people to touch and go through. Jay nodded and went back to focusing on the people around them, letting the conversation between them lapse. They were silent for the rest of the ride. Both were too intent on making sure they were safe, and that no one suspicious was entering the train to focus on a conversation.